Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about Predator, Killer of Killers, which is kind of a semi-anthology animated movie that's on Hulu, that's a spin-off, I guess, of the Predator franchise. We're going to get to that in our full spoiler segment. But in addition to that, we've got our typical On the Horizon segment where we talk about what's coming up. And we've also got a On Beat segment with a few news stories and a few trailers to go over from this week. Some good stuff and some unfortunate stuff to go over there as well. But let's kick things off with our On the Horizon segment. On the Horizon. On the Horizon, as I said, is where we talk about what's coming up in the next week or so. Last week I mentioned the start of the anime season. I only listed the name of one anime, which was Dan to Dan Season 2, just to kind of let everybody know that it's time to get onto your anime apps and set up your watch list for all the new stuff coming out that season. I wanted to highlight another anime that's coming out on Saturday, July 5th, and that is The Summer Hikaru Died, which is coming to Netflix. It's like a psychological horror drama about these two friends, and one of them suddenly realizes that the other one isn't who he was. He's like some kind of monster that's like taken over, but that monster still has memories or whatever of his friendship. So it's really playing on the idea of what actually is your friend. Is it your perceptions of your experiences with them, or is it their actual consciousness and identity? And it's playing on that with like a lot of horror tropes. Mm-hmm. That's coming to Netflix on Saturday, July 5th. Then on Wednesday, July 9th, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is coming back to FXX. I think this is like its 16th season or something.
Yes,
very long-running show, especially considering it was, for the longest time, was always on the edge of cancellation.
Because this season is supposed to have the second part of the Abbott Elementary crossover.
Oh, okay.
The first part already aired on the last season of Abbott Elementary, so this season Sunny's supposed to have the second part to that.
Weird shows to have a crossover.
Yes, very weird show to have a crossover, but the Abbott Elementary episode actually worked really well.
Okay, so that is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, returning on Wednesday, July 9th on FXX. Dexter Resurrection is coming on Friday, July 11th to Paramount Plus. So this is, I guess, it doesn't require you to have the Showtime add-on for the Paramount Plus app.
Oh, you don't need Showtime for Dexter?
It looks not.
I know they did that with Original Sin, because like I have Paramount Plus.
Original Sin, you needed Showtime, but now Original Sin is available just on Paramount Plus as well.
Oh, well, that's good. I can finally watch it now. It's so dumb.
Yeah, but it's looking like maybe this is kind of, they're trying to bring that to an end now. Hopefully they are, where they're just going to fold them together.
I think subscriptions within subscriptions is like a stupid concept. So yeah, hopefully they're just folding them together.
I think the only way that works is when it's something like Hulu or Amazon, and they have like an existing subscription that you can get elsewhere or on its own, but you could just decide for your convenience to order it through that existing app. Like Amazon does that, you know, and like I said, Hulu does that. But
yeah, and for like Hulu, it kind of made sense because Hulu has this whole live TV, right? Like essentially like a cable package that you can subscribe to, and you're subscribing to those additional channels through their cable. I don't know, like it makes sense that way, but like it doesn't make sense to like subscribe to a streaming service and subscribe to an additional tier to like access the rest of the content.
I think what makes it particularly shitty is that Paramount Plus is probably the weakest of the major streamers in like just amount of content. Like they have good stuff. Like they have like the South Park specials. They have Beavis and Butthead return. If you're into Star Trek, they got all that stuff. So they have good stuff on Paramount Plus. But for the most part, it is by far the weakest of like the major streamers. It's worse than like Peacock. It's worse than like all of them. Not even just comparing it to like Netflix. I mean like other ones of its scale, like Peacock. Peacock's way better than Paramount Plus. And then Showtime. Showtime is kind of, their glory days are way in the mirror now, they're way in the past. And they're trying to sell the Showtime streaming service by itself at like the same rate that HBO was charging. And it's like, you don't have the clout to do that. You just do not. You don't have enough content. You don't have good enough content. Like, you just don't. At like any given time, they have maybe like 1 or 2 shows in a year that are like worth watching. And it's kind of a joke that they were trying to do that separate. And then when they merged, and it was like, oh, okay, so they're going to put those all in one streaming service. That makes a lot of sense. And then they were like still keeping them separate to try to get even more money out of you. And I think it's the only way you can get Showtime now is if you have Paramount Plus. Well, you can get through cable subscription, right? The only way you can get it as a streaming service, I think, is if you have Paramount Plus and then you also pay the additional, which makes it even more expensive than what Showtime costs by itself, the Showtime streaming service. So it's like a joke. Because it's, if you look at, like, for example, everything that's on Paramount Plus and everything that's on Showtime streaming app together isn't even like half the quality or the content that you'd have on like HBO Max.
Oh yeah.
Which is a similar kind of thing, which is a similar streaming service in the sense that it's like the parent company plus the channel that's really popular.
So I just looked at Paramount Plus and Dexter Resurrection and our shows are saying I need to upgrade to Showtime still.
Oh, they are. I was looking at it on a different thing and it was saying that you didn't, that it was joined in on this one. So they're still doing the wrong. They're still fucking stupid.
Yeah, I have no clue.
I think there's they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, they don't know what they're doing. Yeah, exactly. It's dumb.
Moving on, Patapon 1+2 Replay is coming on Friday, July 11th to PC, PS5, and Switch. This was a big deal when it was revealed, even though it's just a remaster.
It was a surprise when it was revealed, but...
Yeah, because it was revealed in Nintendo Direct, and it was, even though it's like, I think it's Bandai Namco, and
Bandai Namco's publishing. These are remasters. These were games that were
Sony exclusives.
Well, they were developed by Sony Japan Studio, which is shut down, by the way, because at the beginning of the PS5 era, like, Sony shut down their Japan studio. But Patapon was one of the series that was created by Japan Studio for Sony, specifically for the Sony PSP. Mm-hmm. They were, like, really fun, unique, oddball games. I mean, that's the kind of thing, like, Japan Studio, like, excelled at.
Yeah. Did they also do, like, Parappa and stuff like that?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, Parappa was Japan Studio. Yeah, they excelled at these really unique, quirky games,
Something Sony doesn't have anymore.
Yeah, something Sony doesn't have anymore. And so, this is a first-party PlayStation game. This is a first-party Sony PlayStation IP. So when it showed up in a Nintendo Direct, I was very surprised.
Yeah, a lot of people were. That was one of those ones where if you watch, like, reactions to Directs, like, everybody that knew what that game was like blown away. They're like, What the fuck? What's going on?
Because I was like, oh yeah, Patapon remaster is great, but what the hell is it doing on Switch?
Yeah.
And apparently it's being published by Bandai Namco, because I guess what's going on here is Sony licensed out some of Japan Studios IPs to Bandai Namco, and Bandai Namco is just publishing them.
Can we get a Parappa remaster too?
Hopefully.
That would be cool.
Yeah, and apparently, like, there's no restrictions on what platforms Bandai Namco can bring them to, I guess. So we're getting it on Switch.
Yeah, PC, cool. PS5, and Switch. No Xbox.
Which is funny, because, like, I made like, a meme image of a picture of, like, Hot Shots Golf, which is also coming to Switch now. That's also another first-party Sony IP, initially developed by...
Same Direct. Revealed in the same Direct. Same Direct. Patapon 1 and 2.
Hot Shots Golf was a first-party Sony golf IP that has appeared on every PlayStation console to date. Initially, the first game in the series was developed by Camelot, who after Camelot developed Hot Shots Golf for Sony, went on to develop Mario Golf and Mario Tennis for the N64 for Nintendo.
Yeah, and they're like, they still have kind of a quasi-close relationship with Nintendo.
Yeah, they're
Golden
still...
Sun. They haven't done anything for them for a while, I don't think, but they're...
No, they did the last Mario Tennis and Mario Golf.
On Switch.
On Switch, yeah. They're still doing...
But even those were probably like 5 years ago now.
Yeah, those were a while back now. Yeah, they haven't done anything recently. Fun fact, Camelot used to be like a second party for Sega back in days. They used to do the Shining Force games for Sega. Mm-hmm. So they were doing RPGs before they got into sports games.
And then they did an RPG for PlayStation. I remember. Yes. I remember it was like very slow. I don't remember what the title was. Might have been like Seventh Guest or something. I don't remember, but it was something.
Seventh Guest was like a point and click PC adventure game.
It had a name similar to that. I can't place it though, but I remember I rented it and I was playing it and I was like, Jesus, how long does it take to get out of the fucking first dialogue scene? The first dialogue scene of the game took like 20 minutes. It was like ridiculous.
Beyond the Beyond. That
was Beyond the Beyond. Nothing like Seventh Guest.
It's funny because and that was published by Sony. Sony published that for the PlayStation. Sony did that as a first party game, Beyond the Beyond, with Camelot, and then Sony did Hot Shots Golf with Camelot, and then Camelot never made another game with Sony ever again.
And then they worked with Nintendo. They did the Mario Golf and tennis ones, and they did kind of double duty on those too, because they would make these handheld versions that were like RPGs, and then like Pokemon style RPGs, and then they would do another version that was just a straight up tennis game or golf game that was on the consoles, and then they would interact. You could link them and stuff to transfer data.
And like another kind of funny weird thing is after they shipped Shining Force 3, Scenario 3 for Sega for the Saturn, every game that they have done, with the exception of one, was either Golden Sun or a Mario sports game for Nintendo. And the only exception to that is 2007 when they did We Love Golf for Capcom for the Nintendo Wii.
Yeah, so weird. They're like, we need to make another Mario Golf, but we don't have Nintendo to do it. Well, let's still release it on the Nintendo system exclusively.
Yeah, let's release it exclusively on a Nintendo system with Capcom, because Nintendo never made a Mario Golf for the Wii.
Yeah, it's like an unnecessary, some seemingly unnecessary spiritual successor.
Yes.
Speaking of retro games brought back, we have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 coming also on Friday, July 11th to PC, PS5, and Switch. These are like, they're remasters, but there's a lot more to them. They're like completely new games that they're just keeping the moniker of the old games.
They're keeping the moniker. They're keeping some of the more iconic elements, like some of the stages are the same from those games,
they're like,
stuff like that.
They're not just remastered. These are like completely rebuilt. And and they have additional content, additional, skaters that weren't in the old ones that are in this one. And there's just a lot of, it's weird the way they're like labeling it as if it's like a package of the remakes of 3 and 4, but it's really like a new game that it has stuff from both games in it.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's coming Friday, July 11th to PC, PS5, and Switch. And then Superman is coming out on Friday, July 11th to theaters. James Gunn. This is the theatrical debut of the James Gunn DCU. We've had the debut of it. Creature Commandos was the first thing for that new thing or whatever. And there's also old stuff that's still connected. Like apparently, I guess Blue Beetle is still connected, and the Suicide Squad and all the, and Peacemaker is still connected.
James Gunn said, there are some things that are still in continuity, and basically what he said about that is nothing is continuity with the new DCU until it's mentioned in a new DCU project. So Rick Flag Sr. mentions in, I think, Creature Commandos and in Peacemaker that Peacemaker killed his son. And because he says that, that means that incident is canon to the DCU.
I think the easy way to reconcile this is to think of it as kind of like a multiverse thing. And just imagine that what we saw already, like Peacemaker Season 1, and they might even be addressing that because Peacemaker Season 2, had a scene with 2 Peacemakers in the trailer. So they might even be addressing that. But Peacemaker Season 1, the Suicide Squad, stuff like that. Just imagine that happened in the old DCEU universe, but that something almost identical happened in this universe. So, and then that makes them connect,
Yeah, similar events happened in this universe. So.
Yeah, Jason Momoa's not Aquaman. He was in the end of Peacemaker, but
he's in the end of
Aquaman in this universe.
Yeah, the alien bug invasion still happened, but Jason Momoa, Aquaman, and Ezra Miller Flash did not happen.
Yeah. So think of it the same basic stuff happened, but those elements that are directly tied to the DCU were different for however that worked. Maybe instead of Aquaman, it was what's his name? Nathan Fillion's character showed up.
Yeah, it was Guy Gardner.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe Guy Gardner was the one that showed up and got an insult from Peacemaker instead.
Yeah, exactly.
They should actually do that. They should do a recap, they do previously on or something, and do for the last season, and then show that scene but have different actors.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That would be really funny.
I think that's hard because if it was still going to be Flash and Aquaman, that would force them in the corner of having to cast those parts.
But don't even do that. Like I said, have Guy Gardner instead of Aquaman, right. And have what I mean, something like that.
Yeah. Although they can't do that either, according to the Peacemaker season 2 trailer, because he goes into that interview for the Justice Gang, and it's clear they haven't met before.
It could be somebody else then.
Yeah.
Right. You saw Superman at the end of Peacemaker, but it was never Henry Cavill. You just saw his silhouette, so they could just have a corn sweater,
Right. Which is interesting because I saw a new interview with James Gunn. The interviewer asked James Gunn when we're going to see Superman again. And James Gunn said in a couple of years, and the interview clarified, no, not in a sequel, as a character. And James Gunn was as a character, sooner than that.
Even besides that, I think it's almost guaranteed he's going to be in Supergirl, probably at the end of the movie.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. It would be fun if maybe they're doing it. Maybe there's the David Cornsweet Superman cameo in Peacemaker season 2.
Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense if they did something I think it would be fun. It would kind of the way I said to try to explain it as being kind of multiverse or whatever,
and the way
would make it work.
And the way I see it would be a payoff for something Peacemaker says early in the season or something about Superman, mouthing off the way he does about all superheroes. It would be a payoff to that.
Yeah.
The same way Aquaman showing up at the end of season 1 was a payoff to Peacemaker constantly saying he fucks fish the entire season.
Yeah, totally.
I could see that happening.
Yeah, that would be really cool. So I hope they do something kind of cool and different like that, but we'll have to see what they end up doing. James Gunn's the kind of guy that I could imagine actually doing something like that.
Oh, so, 100%.
And since he's also filming Superman, he could have done it very easily because he made Peacemaker and Superman kind of close to each other. So he very easily could have Peacemaker season 2 and Superman very close to each other. He could have very easily just grabbed some people from the Superman cast and said, "Hey, you want to do a scene real quick?"
Oh yeah, he probably did. I mean, Max Lord and the Justice Gang do appear in Peacemaker season 2, so he has clearly done that.
Yeah, but he could do it in the context of what I was saying, he could have easily done that, and it wouldn't have been that hard, I don't think. So no. I could imagine him doing something like that. I hope they do something like that. If not that exact scene, then something along those lines. That would be really cool. But yeah, Superman, to be more on topic of the movie itself, it looks great. We've talked about it. We've raved about the trailers as they've come out. I'm excited about it. I'm really excited. The last trailer really showed us Lex Luthor the way I want him to be. Yeah. It's great. I'm so excited for this.
Oh yeah, Nicholas Hoult, it looks like he's going to be the perfect Lex Luthor. I'm super excited for this.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so psyched for this. So, and what I've been hearing from people that are doing press for it, they've done a few screenings and stuff, not a lot, but a few, and people seem to be glowing about it mostly.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that people are enjoying it. It's a good movie.
But that's it for our On the Horizon segment, and now we're moving on to On Beat. On Beat is our news segment, and we're going to start things off with Neil Druckmann is unsurprisingly exiting The Last of Us Season 3 as production of his game Intergalactic is ramping up. Yeah, also, Haley Gross is leaving. She was a co-writer of The Last of Us 2 and was also a writer on Season 2 of The Last of Us. She's also stepping back, and that leaves Craig Mazin as the sole showrunner now.
I mean, that just makes sense to me. Making Intergalactic, that's Neil Druckmann's main job. Right?
Yeah, this is his day job.
yeah, that's his day job, and so that's going to take priority. And yeah, as production on that ramps up, he's going to have less time to focus on other things like The Last of Us TV show. And I think after getting 2 seasons out, they probably have that rhythm down to where Craig can probably take the reins and have a good idea of what Neil Druckmann wants for this TV series.
And I'm sure Druckmann's still going to be in contact. It's not like he's going to write it off and never talk to them again.
Right, yeah.
He's just not going to be a showrunner or a direct writer on it, but he'll probably be fielding phone calls every so often and shit still.
It could be one of those things where with George R. R. Martin, he's just kicked off the show, and then like he just badmouths the production after the fact.
Yeah.
Like what happened after Game of Thrones season 5, where he was basically kicked off the production of the show. But no, I don't think it's nothing like crazy. It's just, yeah, obviously the new game's got to get made, so like that's the priority.
It's not a conflict or anything. There's no drama. This is just straight up scheduling issues.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I saw like a lot of people like, oh, the show's gonna suck now. I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think there's gonna be like some massive dip in quality.
Honestly, Craig Mazin's probably the real talent anyways.
Yeah.
He's the better writer of the two.
Yeah.
I think so. You know, if you look at their credits going back, Neil Druckmann, yeah, he was the lead on The Last of Us, but Craig Mazin also did Chernobyl, which is like a very highly regarded HBO show, you know? One of the most highly regarded HBO shows, so that kind of tells you something.
Oh yeah, like absolutely. Yeah, and Craig Mazin also, I don't know if you remember the Harland Williams Disney comedy Rocket Man. But that was written by Craig Mazin.
Our next news story is, there's nothing good about this. This is bad. You can kind of read it as an I told you so from many, many people that were acting counter to the excitement of when a certain merger was happening. But yeah, that's not the direction we're going to take in reporting this. We're just going to talk about the bad news of it, which is that there were mass layoffs at Microsoft's Xbox division. At least 9,000 staff were affected. That doesn't necessarily mean they lost their jobs. It just means they're affected. Some of them were shifted around to different positions. A lot were let go. At least one studio was fully shuttered. Several projects were canceled. To go over the details before we go into like our thoughts on it, I'll just go over the studios one by one. Raven Software, there's many developers for Call of Duty. One of the developers is Raven Software, Unknown Cuts, but they were affected. High Moon, another Call of Duty studio, Unknown Cuts. Again, we don't know exactly how many were laid off, but people were laid off. Sledgehammer Games, another Call of Duty studio, again, Unknown Cuts. Blizzard, needs no introduction, Warcraft, all that stuff. Cuts of around 100 people is what's being reported. With the game Warcraft Rumble ceasing direct support outside of like bug fixes, basically. Turn 10, who last did Forza Motorsport in, I think, 2023, reportedly 50% of their staff has been cut. So half the developer cut right there. Rare, unknown cuts, but their Everwild game, which people were hotly anticipating, is gone. It's canceled. And one of the big veterans at Rare also left.
Greg Mails.
Apparently, I don't think he was let go, but he left.
He left, yeah. Apparently, like, the
in disgust.
Cancellation, caused him to leave. I don't know if he was explicitly, let go by Microsoft or...
The wording seems to imply he left on his own accord.
Yes.
But again, in relation to what's going on.
Right, yeah, in relation to what's going on. Yeah, it says he left following Everwild's cancellation. Yeah, I mean, losing Greg Mails for, Rare is huge because he was the director of Donkey Kong Country and Banjo-Kazooie and Sea of Thieves and pretty much most of the major, hits that people think back on Rare fondly for, he was involved in, a huge way.
Yeah. Also, ZeniMax Online Studios, who did Elder Scrolls Online. Again, unknown cuts. A lot of staff were cut. We don't know how many. And they had a new MMORPG that was in development, and that's canceled. It's gone. And then the biggest cut of all is The Initiative, which was the studio that was working on the new Perfect Dark game that was very highly anticipated. That entire studio has been shuttered, and the Perfect Dark game is canceled.
Yeah, and I was looking forward to that game.
A lot of people were. That was a very highly anticipated game.
Yep, that sucks. But it's fine. Game cancellations happen. They happen all the time. You roll with the punches.
It's the staff that's
It's the staff. What doesn't happen all the time is 9,000 people losing their jobs. It's happening way too often in this industry these days.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. It just sucks. It sucks. It's infuriating. And it's because Microsoft has been making bad decision after bad decision.
They've been spending way too much, and they've been throwing their financial weight around, and they've made a bunch of mergers and acquisitions, and they've been shutting down these studios left and right.
They've been doing things like buying Activision Blizzard, which was a very expensive purchase. They had to go to court for that. They had to testify in court in these court proceedings that this acquisition would not lead to layoffs, and that they wouldn't lay off anybody as a result of this, which clearly they lied.
Because as I mentioned, 3 of the studios that are affected by cuts directly work on Call of Duty, an Activision game, and Blizzard was also part of Activision, and around 100 people were cut from that. So just from that Activision Blizzard side, there's been a ton of cuts.
They've been doing goofy things. Game Pass, which they're giving their games away, you know, they're devaluing their product. Game Pass just trained their user base to not pay for games. That certainly hasn't helped anything. Game Pass is not growing to scale to where it's profitable for them. They're doing other goofy stuff. Like this is an Xbox campaign where now they're saying like laptops and cell phones are Xboxes, and like, okay, we have an Xbox that's an Xbox, but also like this Oculus VR helmet is an Xbox, sort of, and also your cell phone maybe. It's like, what are you doing with these decisions? What are they doing over there?
They're making a handheld, and it's going to have Steam on it, which is like, on the surface, that sounds like, oh, wow, that's actually like a really clever move, because that means not only do they have access to all those PC games, but they also have access to all like the Sony games that were released on Steam and stuff. So you're going to be able to play Sony games on it and stuff, and it sounds like, wow, that's a clever move and stuff. Here's what you need to think about that. How did Microsoft work that deal out with Valve?
Well, they didn't.
Like, because this doesn't sound like a financially viable solution.
Yeah. Well, there is no deal with Valve because it's literally just it's a PC running Windows 11. And so by the virtue of it just being a Windows 11 PC, you can download Steam and use the Steam store and play PC games.
Which means like Microsoft gets no licensing fee on any of those games.
It's
and it's going to be like at a certain point, you have to look at it from that angle, because it's like, well, why would you buy anything on their servers when pretty much everything Microsoft makes comes to PC anyways?
Right.
And then a bunch more content, and Steam has better sales, better deals. So besides Game Pass, which is, like you said, basically giving games away, besides that, why would you get anything through the Xbox store when you could just buy it on Steam at that point?
Yeah, I don't know why they would they're saying like the next Xbox, the next generation Xbox is going to have third-party stores. And I'm saying, why would you want that on your console? Because if I buy the next Gears of War on Steam versus directly through Xbox, Microsoft has to give 30% of that to Valve.
Yeah.
Instead of keeping that 30%. I just don't see the vision there.
Yeah. Like there's aspects of it when you just hear it on the surface, it sounds like a savvy move, and then when you actually think about it, it's like, ooh, that's actually doesn't sound like that smart.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it kind of sounds dumb.
Yeah.
So like all these mistakes with the business are like compounded, and unfortunately the executives making these decisions aren't the ones who pay the price. It's the employees, it's the workers, you know.
One of them was rumored to be stepping down, a high up, and then he just came out and said, no, that's not true.
Yeah, they came out and said, no, that's not true.
And it's like, it probably should have been true.
Yeah, it probably should have been true, yeah. Because, like, I don't know, the employees that they just laid off at Raven Software, none of them, like, decided it was a good idea to tell people that a cell phone was an Xbox. Like, that wasn't their decision.
Yeah.
It's tragic, it's awful. What's worse, what really made my blood boil was when I saw the letter that Phil Spencer sent to the teams that they were laying off about the layoffs, in which, like, he spends time, like, saying, like, oh, yeah, Xbox is more successful than ever, we're more profitable than ever, we're having great success, and also you're fired. Yeah.
See ya.
Also, you're fired. It's like, why would you say that?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, how cold-hearted do you have to be? Like, that was ghoulish.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just tone deaf.
Yeah.
Unfortunate news, but let's move on from that. Let's talk about some trailers, because we got some good trailers this week.
We do have some good trailers. I'm excited about trailers this week.
We're starting off with one of the trailers that we had a previous trailer for this that almost made it into our show's discussion, but we cut it because there just wasn't a lot to talk about yet. But now we got a more full kind of trailer, and we can talk about that, plus everything that we saw in the last trailer can inform that as well. And that is for a movie called Eddington, which is coming from Ari Aster, and it stars Pedro Pascal, Joaquin Phoenix, and Austin Butler. And it's like a modern Western set during the COVID era.
Yeah, because this is set in, I'm not sure like exactly where, like it's set in the Western U.S. That's what makes it like a
small
Western.
Town in a small town in a during the COVID era.
Yeah,
and it's
so
playing
this is
on
like
that,
about
those kind of
2020
divisions and stuff. Yeah.
And you've got like Joaquin Phoenix is playing the sheriff who seems like a real like MAGA type character. This really like MAGA type guy who's like going to, he's the sheriff. He's going to clean up the streets. Pedro Pascal is playing a man who is running for mayor.
I think he is the mayor, and like Joaquin Phoenix is challenging for him for his job.
Okay, I saw like there's like, oh yeah, okay. He's probably like running for re-election, but like he's running like on a reform platform, and he's butting heads with Joaquin Phoenix specifically because like Joaquin Phoenix's character is running against him for mayor as well.
And it all starts to, what we see in this trailer that we didn't see in the previous one is that it all starts to lead directly to excessive violence.
Yeah, excessive violence. Yeah, because like there's tensions because of like COVID and stuff like mask mandates. Tensions are flaring because of that, and it's building up to violence breaking out.
Yeah, and that's where it gets like the kind of Western vibe, because it's like it's very much got that kind of like dual sensibility of like, I don't mean like duels in two, I mean duels in like somebody versus somebody else.
Yeah,
things are coming to a head with two people directly put into conflict with each other and leading directly to violence. Yes,
it looks intense. It looks great.
Yeah. Next trailer we got is for a movie called Begonia. This is the next one from Yorgos, who is a director who's been making a shit ton of movies recently. He's been putting them out very quickly, and they've all been very highly rated. I don't think I've seen any of them actually any of his recent stuff, but he's been working with Emma Stone a lot, and this is another one where he's working with Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, Alicia Silverstone's apparently in this. I didn't see her on the trailer, but this was my favorite trailer of the week. Not saying the movie necessarily looks like my favorite movie of the bunch, the one I'm most excited for. That would be another one that we're going to be talking about later. But the trailer itself is just chef's kiss, beautifully put together, really well strung together with this like narrative about like a queen bee and the structure of like a beehive, with these guys that are kind of like conspiracy theorists that decide to like get themselves involved.
They're workers at this company, like pretty low level workers at this company that Emma Stone's character is like the CEO of, and they kidnap her, and Jesse Plemons like seems to believe she's an alien.
Yeah.
And their heads are full of conspiracies apparently.
It looks good.
It looks good.
Yorgos is on a major hot streak, so it's going to be interesting to see that continuing on. This looks like more interesting to me than any of the other things I've seen from him recently. Any of the other things that have been coming out that have kind of been more like whimsical and stuff. This looks more like grounded and serious, but like also weird and interesting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It does have like the weirdness to it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And Jesse Plemons is just killing it already in the trailer.
Jesse Plemons, oh man, he is a treasure. I don't know like where he came from, but man, he has been killing it ever since he showed up.
Yeah, he's been killing it, and it looks good. Our next trailer is one of the most hotly anticipated movies that's coming out, I believe, next year, and that is Project Hail Mary. This is based on a book by Andy Weir, who also wrote The Martian, that was adapted into a movie with Matt Damon. This one, though, is being directed by Lord and Miller, who did like the Into the Spider-Verse movies, 21 Jump Street, like those movies. This one was being adapted by Drew Goddard, who also adapted The Martian, and the lead is Ryan Gosling. And it's kind of a movie about like a first contact, it seems, but like with other things going on.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because at first I thought this was going to be very grounded, realistic science fiction, like The Martian was trying to be. There's elements you can see it, but then like when the alien gets introduced, you're like, oh, okay, this is going in a sort of like more fantastical direction.
Yeah, like kind of 80s Spielbergian,
Yeah, exactly. So like it looks like it's grounded like at first in some sort of science, but then this alien character gets introduced, which you don't like really like see it in the trailer. You see its hands, or like what's assumed to be its hands. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, Ryan Gosling's telling it to like make a thumbs up, which is fun. Apparently, and I mean the trailer gives like the plot away, like apparently like the sun is dying and like a bunch of stars in our immediate like galaxy are dying, and like apparently the dying stars are all in proximity to each other, and there's like one that is not affected. And so the idea is they're sending Ryan Gosling's character out into space to kind of
Who is not an astronaut, yeah.
Who's not an astronaut, to investigate the healthy star so that they can determine what's going on and try to save Earth.
You know what this kind of reminded me of is we covered it for the podcast. We did that one movie with Adam Sandler. It was like a serious movie with Adam Sandler where he played an astronaut and he had an encounter with this like spider-like alien or something. It reminds me of like that, but more like whimsical and fun, whereas that movie was just straight up depressing.
Yeah.
That was like the Eastern European version of this.
I love Ryan Gosling in this trailer too because he's like protesting every step of the way. He's like, I'm an astronaut. He doesn't want to go into space, but like the woman like in charge of this program is insisting he's the only one that can do it. And it's somehow, some way up out there, he runs into this alien.
He makes first contact.
Yes.
From what I've heard from people who've read the book and people who've seen, there was like, I guess 10 minutes of footage shown, I think at like CinemaCon or something. And from what I've heard from both reports of people who've read the book and people who saw the footage was that this is like a must watch. They're saying this will be like the movie to watch next year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like they're saying this is going to be like an Oscar contender. This is going to be like the fun movie that everybody wants to watch during like the summer season, like everything. This is the movie that it's going to be the big movie next year. So it's cool to kind of see a trailer for this, and it's pretty far out to have a trailer this comprehensive, but it looks good. Next up, we got a trailer for a movie that I had mentioned when I talked about Begonia being the best trailer of the bunch, but I said it wasn't the movie that I want to see the most. This is the movie I want to see the most, which is The Running Man, it's not really a remake of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie from the 80s. It's based on the same source material.
Yeah, and it's based on the same source material. I have
It's a Stephen King short story, and this one's being directed by Edgar Wright, who, you know, if you don't know, I've been living under a rock. He did Shaun of the Dead and The World's End and Scott Pilgrim Must Die. Scott Pilgrim versus the
World. Yeah, he directed that. He directed Baby Driver.
That's more recent one. Last Night in Soho. Yeah.
Yes, so that was Edgar Wright. Yeah, so like he's done all these films which are classics. Like
he has a very distinct style.
Yes, he has a very distinct style to his films, and this is definitely an Edgar Wright film. This one has Glenn Powell in the lead.
Yeah, who's
in the Arnold
blowing up.
He's blowing up.
He's doing like a good 4 or 5 movies a year the last couple of years since like
I guess like Maverick. For anybody like unfamiliar with The Running Man, it centers around like it's the future, or I guess it's the near future. It's some sort of future where like
it's Boy Kills World.
Yeah, we're like Boy Kills World basically ripped this off. There's a game show where like I guess like in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie it was like convicted criminals compete to win their freedom. Doesn't like look like that's the case here. It looks like Glenn Powell's character is just like a poor schmuck down on his luck who like voluntarily enters this to win a better life as the prize.
For his daughter, mostly.
Yeah. So kind of like a Squid Game aspect to it.
Mm-hmm. Apparently that's closer to the book or the story. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's got kind of like a death game vibe to it.
Yeah,
and,
because the idea is like the game itself is he's got to survive for like a
It's American Gladiators, but for real.
Yeah. He's got to survive for a predetermined amount of time while like everybody in the country is out to kill him.
There's like a bunch of hunters that are out to kill him, and it's all being televised and watched, and it's like American Gladiators for real. If you don't remember, American Gladiators is a show where like athletes would go up against these other athletes, and the American Gladiators were these figures, and their job was to stop them from proceeding, and you know, and then they were trying to get past them and stuff. It's like that if like there was killing, basically. But whereas the original one all took place kind of like on a giant set, like it was like a stadium with people watching, and this seems to be taking place just throughout the city.
Yes,
like
it seems to be
drones that are following the characters and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't seem to be like set like on a contained game show stage. Mm-hmm. You know, this is like, oh yeah, he can do it anywhere, and like he's free game for the entire time the contest is running. Josh Brolin Nolan seems to be like the guy in charge of the game and like the main antagonist.
Yeah. And then you have Pullman Domingo's kind of like the host of the show.
Yes.
Lee Pace is one of the hunters that's coming after him.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. Looks good.
Michael Cera and William H. Macy are in it too.
Yeah, Michael Cera, of course. I'm surprised like Simon Pegg probably has a cameo in this somewhere.
Yeah, or like Nick Frost, yeah.
Yeah, Nick Frost, yeah. But yeah, it looks a lot of fun. Glenn Powell, especially like in the trailer, like looks like he's having a lot of fun with the movie. Like with his character.
It's got that kind of Edgar Wright, like phonetic energy to it, so.
Yes.
It looks like it's going to be a great time. I've been looking forward to this since I heard about it going into production, so it'll be really cool to actually.
And I like it, like watching the character because it's clear that the character Glenn Powell's portraying is capable enough, but like he's not John Wick, you know, like, so there is a scene where like he throws the grenade at like Lee Pace and then Lee Pace just like kicks it back to him and he like narrowly escapes getting blown up. So like,
it's so funny because he's like, I got a grenade and he threw it at him and then Lee Pace like kicks it back and says, right back at you.
So he clearly like messes up in that instance. So he's not like slick and smooth like a John Wick character.
He's hanging on by the seat of his pants.
Yes. Looks a lot of fun. I can't wait to see it.
Yep. And then the last trailer we're going to talk about is for a game. This kind of popped up out of nowhere. It's called Full Metal Schoolgirl, and it's being developed by Ukes, who did the Earth Defense Force games. They also did the recent Double Dragon Revive game, and they used to do the old WWF or I think it was WWF back then, games on PlayStation. Not the N64 ones, that was Aki, but Ukes did the PlayStation ones.
They do the WWE 2K games for Take-Two as
do
well.
They?
So,
do they still do that?
They still do it. As far as like I looked up the last one that was released and the developers Ukes, so yeah.
Okay. Well, so they're doing a game. It's called Full Metal Schoolgirl. It's being published by D3 Publisher, who does the Earth Defense Force games that Ukes developed. That's their relationship. But they also publish like the Onichambara games, which is the bikini samurai girls wearing like cowboy hats game. If you remember from like the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 a little bit era, like early part of the PlayStation 3 era, I guess. But yeah, so what's interesting about this game to me is that there used to be these kind of like weird, kooky games that would come out of Japan.
Correction, I'm sorry. Ukes' last one they did was WWE 2K19. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
No, apparently it's visual concepts on those games now. Yeah. I do apologize for the
shame.
Incorrect. Yeah.
Shame.
But go on. You were talking about Onichibara.
Oh no, I'm talking about Full Metal Schoolgirl. It's like there used to be a type of game that we would get from Japan in like the PlayStation 2 era that were like kind of lower budget, medium budget. They weren't like indie games, but they were like, you know, these low budget games, and they were quirky and they were weird and they were often highly sexualized. And, you know, that's where you'd get a bunch of games that had things like jiggle physics, if you'd hear like terms like that, you know? We're talking about games like Senran Kagura. We're talking about games like, even like Dead or Alive is like an example of the kind of game that you just don't see anymore, you know? And we had a ton of these kind of games. They were coming out like all the time, and we were getting a lot of them over here, but there were even more coming out in Japan that weren't coming out over here. And there was a certain point when like Steam, for example, like I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, Steam had this like rush of them because all of a sudden they all got like ported over to Steam, and there were a bunch of these type of games, these kind of weird sexual off games that were kind of like these low budget Japanese games like this. And that whole like style of game is almost like gone now. Like you just don't see games like that at all anymore. And that's why I want to talk specifically about this game versus some other game trailers that come out and stuff, is because it's like a return for a type of game that we haven't had in a while. It's also one of the first third-party Switch 2 games that's coming day and date with the other systems, which is going to happen more and more, but right now, pretty much all the third-party games on Switch 2 are old games that we're getting now. We got Elden Ring coming up. We got Cyberpunk on there already. They're all old games, you know? And then we have a few first-party games, not many, and we're waiting, and everyone's kind of like, oh, when are Switch 2 actually going to get some games and stuff? This is like an example of one that dropped, because the weird thing that's been happening with all these kind of like June video game events and stuff is that almost nothing is being revealed that's on Switch 2. And we know that's because Nintendo kind of runs their Nintendo Directs, and everybody that makes games, they just want to save their stuff for the Nintendo Directs. Like, even if they're, like, for example, if there is a Call of Duty game coming to Switch 2 still, I don't know if there is still after the firings that happened that we talked about in the news story, but if there is, and it eventually comes like day and date with the other versions, they probably will announce the Call of Duty game for the other systems first and not even show a logo for Switch 2, and then wait for a Nintendo Direct to like show a new trailer for it with a Switch 2 logo. Because that's kind of how you sell games to Nintendo fans, by being in Nintendo Directs. So we haven't really had a lot of like Switch 2 games being shown since the system got released, because Nintendo hasn't had a full Direct. They had the Donkey Kong Direct, but they haven't had anything else since the Switch 2 was launched. And this is one of the few games that has now come out of nowhere that's like, oh, this is also on Switch 2. So it's kind of cool on like multiple fronts, because it's like a return to those old low budget games from Japan that we don't get anymore, but it's also like one of the first third party games that we're getting like day and date for the Switch 2.
Right. It's cool to see more day and date games getting announced for Switch 2.
As for the game itself,
opinion on this game, but
as for the game itself, it's basically a bunch of like, or a group of like cyborg girls that are fighting against a greedy corporation that runs everything. And it's just ridiculous and over the top. And it looks like, you know, borderline like a Suda51 game. Not quite as creative as a Suda51 game, but like on that kind of border of like weirdness and stuff.
Yeah, it is like reminiscent. I would say I got like some Suda vibes from it, but like it was never enough for me to go like, oh, this is a Suda51 game. It's clearly not.
Yeah. This game really has like just the Onichimbara vibes. Yeah.
Well, what was that game like? Dead Man.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called. Like
Romeo
that was
is a dead man.
Romeo is a dead man. Like that was like, I was not sure. I was like, this is a Suda51 game. Like,
yeah.
Like
I should clarify, Suda51's not involved in this at all.
No, like Romeo is a dead man. That was a trailer I was watching where I was like, this is a Suda51 game.
Yeah. I'm just saying.
I will sell my Switch if this is not a Suda51 game.
It's one of these, I'm just saying this is one of those games that's kind of on that edge of like, you know, when like Marvelous was like a big developer or publisher, and you would see like a bunch of games for them coming to like Wii or PlayStation 2 or something. It's that kind of era return, which is interesting to me. So that is Full Metal Schoolgirl. That's kind of all I really got to say about it. Like I said, more than the game itself, it's just interesting to me that this type of game is coming back, and that also it's going to be like a day and date on Switch 2 for a third party game, which we haven't really seen yet. So, but that is it for our trailers and for our On Beat segment. And now we're moving on to full spoilers. This week on Full Spoilers, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we are going to be talking about Predator, Killer of Killers, which is an anthology movie. So it's a movie that's broken up into parts, and each part is like an anthology story, and then they all end up coming together.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a semi-anthology, because like they started...
It's like What If. It's like What If.
They started as an anthology, and then it all leads up to like a singular story.
Yeah. It's like how the What If episodes, and then they did the one where they all came together, you know?
Yeah.
It's like that, but it's all like housed within a movie.
It's housed within a movie. It feels like this was originally like a series.
Yeah.
I don't know, cause like I was looking at the runtime. The runtime is like an hour and a half. And it's like 3 vignettes and then the final part where they all come together. And when it got to the last part, there was still like 24 minutes left of like this 1 hour, 24 minute movie. So I'm kind of like, like 3 segments divided by like 60 minutes. Like they're probably not individually long enough to be like episodes, I guess. I don't know.
It could be about 20 minutes. I mean, like the Castlevania series on Netflix, some of the episodes for that were like 18 minutes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so it kind of feels like this was initially like a series, but we probably figured, that would be like 4 episodes if we split it up, so probably like not enough.
And it goes with a trend that we've kind of seen where like we have mega franchises, where Predator's not really a mega franchise, but we've seen it with mega franchises, like where they've done these kind of like anthology stories, sometimes as movies, sometimes as series, like they did with Star Wars, where they did like an animated like Tales of the Jedi thing, and they're doing a Tales of the Sith one now too. And then they've done it with Marvel, they did it with What If, which I mentioned already. Where it's kind of like a spin-off, it's kind of maybe quasi-canon, but there's a lot of stuff in this that like, if it's supposed to be canon, since when do Predators time travel?
Yeah, that was like my thing too, because I haven't watched like, all the Predator movies, but like, I haven't heard of like time travel in relation to the Predators.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, like, yeah, they did like really explain bringing these characters. Well, I think the explanation is they keep them frozen in cryo until they're ready to have them fight for some reason. But that would have had to been like a long time for like some of those characters. And
yeah, some of the gaps.
Why they would do that?
I didn't pay attention to the year they mentioned for the Japanese one, but I know the Viking one was like 800 AD or something.
The Japanese one was like the 1600s.
Yeah, so the Viking one was like 800 AD. The Japanese one was like the 1600s, and then the World War II one was like 1940s.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like there's hundreds of years between them, or more.
Yeah, that's why I initially thought like these weren't going to be like connected to each other. Like these were going to be separate vignettes of like predators hunting humans in different eras, which is like a perfectly fine premise for an anthology series. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it was kind of confusing, like when you saw them on the ship together.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a forced conceit. Like that's, I think,
especially because
I really don't like that aspect of it.
Especially because like they don't mention time travel or like anything like in this movie. Like they don't make it explicit that time travel happened at any point.
There are lots of leaps of logic in this, where it's just like a character will just go like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this now or something. And it's like, how are you going to do that? Okay, you're a mechanic on World War II planes. How are you going to take over a fucking alien ship, a spaceship, which is very different from a fucking fighter jet?
Right.
Not even a fighter jet, a fighter like biplane from World War II era.
You are like in no way.
Yeah. And you're going to fly back. You're going to fly back to Earth from where? What language are you going to read to figure out how to get there? Like, how are you going to fucking get to Earth? Like, none of it makes sense. And it's like, there's a lot of leaps of logic.
The character is a gutsy, can-do ace pilot. So,
yeah.
Also just like believe in his innate skills.
I think we get a lot of this kind of stuff with these kind of animated anthology spin-off shows where they just go like, it's animated. It doesn't matter. And that's kind of like the context that they're made with. And that, it bothers me because it's like, then you try to tie it into canon because the end of the movie, there's like a clip where you see the girl from Prey is like in stasis or something.
Oh yeah, that was like an end stinger. And I was like, cool. Like
it feels less like you're making this cool and more like you're making Prey weaker.
It's not even that. It just like hit me as like, oh, this is like a cool stinger like for fans, but like this is just the character from like your last Hulu movie that you made, like that Dan Trachtenberg made. It was a fine movie. I know people enjoyed it, but was it really like, oh, we gotta have a teaser for this character? I don't know. It was just weird to me. It was kind of like self-congratulatory.
To me, this whole thing, and I've mentioned it before, but it reeks of What If.
Yeah.
Which is not a compliment. If you've watched our coverage of What If, it's not a compliment. What If had like the one really good episode and then most of it sucked.
I just don't think like the format Predator works in this format of like these 20-minute vignettes. Cause like you have to like do so much with it and it doesn't work because
it also like, devalues the Predators and like how crazy and powerful they are. That they're just easily taken out in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, because you have to first you have to establish the setting, you have to establish the characters, your protagonists, what they have going on, then you have to introduce the Predator into the scenario, then you have to have them fight the Predator, survive against the Predator, and defeat the Predator, and realistically that should be a much longer process. That should be like a 2-hour film, because if you go back, if you watch the original Predator film, it happens in each of these vignettes where multiple trained, skilled people go up against the Predator, and then they all get killed except for our main protagonist who manages to kill the Predator, but this happens in like, they fight the Predator and kill it off in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it just makes them look like worthless.
Versus like the original movie where you have a platoon of like trained soldiers and they're all like slowly being picked off over the course of this movie until Arnold Schwarzenegger is the only person left, and then he doesn't easily take out the Predator. Like, it's like this
it's like a desperate survival struggle, yeah.
Yeah, surviving, where he like just barely ends up winning at the end of it.
Or even in like Prey, it's an example of where like she's not looked at as a threat by the Predator. The Predator's going after all these other figures, and she's kind of ancillary to all of that. And then she ends up observing him, learning how to fight him, and then fights him,
Right.
But she would have been killed right away if the Predator had perceived her as a threat. he just didn't. He didn't perceive her as any threat at all. And that's how she ended up getting one over on him. Whereas, like, these predators are going directly after these specific characters in each of these vignettes. And
you gotta admit, these characters are seeing, like, this creature for the first time ever, but they're easily killed.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's just kind of like,
The size scaling's all off, too. Like, the predator that fought against the Viking was, like, 30 feet tall.
I thought, like, the predator designs were real cool in this one. I especially like the second predator in, like, the Japan segment.
That one was cool, but the first one was, like just really cool way design. Too big. Like, they scaled that predator. Huge. He was just
I don't mind a predator being bigger than usual, like a massive predator. Like, I mean,
like, the Predator and Prey was big, but he was, like, you know, I think the actor was, like, 7 foot something, and they made him to look like he was maybe, like, 8 feet tall. The one in the first vignette was, like, fucking, like, 30 feet tall. It was ridiculous. Like, his head was larger than all of the bodies of everybody he killed combined. It was ridiculous. Like, it was weird. Like, they way overscaled him. And I think that comes back to this is animation. So they just went wild. They said, well, let's just go wild with the animation and our designs, and we can do whatever we want because it's animation. And there's, in a sense, that's cool because I like the idea that, like, oh, you can do anything with animation. It's liberating. It's freeing. But when you're trying to, like, kind of stick within the context of an established franchise, you kind of have to play by that franchise's rules. And when you deviate from it, it stands out like a sore thumb. And it hurts. It hurts it. So I don't know. Like, I think the individual things were kind of fun to watch, but, like, I couldn't take any of them seriously. Like, I couldn't see them as canon. And then when they brought them all together, I'm like, well, what the fuck is this time travel shit? And then when they had the stinger at the end with the girl from Prey, I'm like, okay, this is just making me upset now. Like, I don't want you to be bringing in characters from good Predator movies now. You're, like, diminishing those now in my mind. Just don't do that. I don't know. I think they went about this in the wrong way. I think they should have just done separate episodes, and they should have been, like, maybe an hour long each and completely unrelated to each other. Because also, we've never seen anything in the Predator lore where after they defeat a Predator, the Predators go and abduct them or something. It's like, when does that ever happen? How does that have anything to do with the Predator lore and stuff? Because the Predator lore is like, there's kind of a respect for, like, fellow hunters and stuff. And if somebody survives them, they're like, okay, we'll leave you alone, you know?
Yeah, there was, like, respect. like at the end of Predator 2, Danny Glover's character, like, a Predator ship comes down, and Danny Glover is thinking he's totally fucked. And then they just give him a trophy.
Yeah.
And then they leave.
Yeah. So it's, like, weird that they're like, I don't know.
So now they're kidnapping people and taking them to their homeworld to, like, fight the last boss Predator. Like, that wasn't, like, anywhere in the lore.
Yeah, and the last boss Predator, as you referred to him, is just generic evil chieftain.
Yeah.
It's just...
I don't know. Like, it wasn't, like, the best thing, like, I've ever seen. I was just like, yeah, this is fine, I guess.
I was really disappointed because I liked the idea that they were going to explore these different eras, because after Prey, and Prey going, like, way back in time instead of being set modern, all the Predator fans were basically like, oh, do like feudal Japan next, do Viking era next, do, like, you know, and they just basically said, okay, we'll do all of them. And they did that with this, and I liked the idea of that they would do that. I just think that they ended up making these really rushed, really, like, loose with the canon, really loose with believability, things that aren't meant to be taken seriously. And it's just kind of that, I think it's like a scapegoat of saying, like, oh, it's animation, so just, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like that's lazy to me.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, this is an animation thing. Oh, this just sits between Prey and the next movie, which is going to be now a big theatrical film.
Predator Badlands, yeah.
Yeah, Badlands. So this is more like, oh, to keep the franchise warm, I guess. You know, like, yeah.
And honestly, it's done more to diminish my anticipation of Badlands than it's done to keep it warm.
Right, yeah. Yeah, overall, it was pretty underwhelming.
I was not happy with this movie, as is very obvious by the way I'm talking about it. Like I said, if this was a different era, if they weren't trying to tie this into any movies, if this was just like, these are just some fun little shorts or something, they were perfectly fun. The action sequences were really cool. There was some
the
cool
animation I enjoyed. I liked the animation.
All that stuff was good, and it's just the more they tried to push it into, like, a canon territory, the more it just got annoying.
Also, like, I hated how, like, the three stories were, like, identical.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they were, like, about different people, different time periods. I did, like, appreciate the fact that the third story was, like, about aerial dogfighting with, like, a predator in a ship. I thought that was unique. That was one of the things from the initial trailer I thought was unique. But, like, they all follow the same template movie, we're like, oh, here's our protagonist. Here's the people the protagonist exists with, the other warriors who are going to just be cannon fodder for this predator. So, like, everybody around our protagonist gets killed. Our protagonist has, like, one person that they deeply care about who ends up dying. Like, the Viking, woman, she had her son. The Japan, like, the dude had his brother. And then in World War I, the guy had his commander, that he really, like...
Respected, yeah.
Respected. Yeah, so there's the one person they care about that they die, and then after that person dies, then they go on to, like, completely wreck the Predator shit. It's kind of like they all follow the exact same, like, beat-for-beat formula and with no variation. That's lazy.
Yeah. I think the last one you're referring to, the World War II dogfight one, that also presented the same issue that I'd mentioned before, but, like, in a different context, which is that it's another example of, like, oh, it's animation, we can do whatever we want, which is, there's, like, a cool aspect to it, but when you push towards canon, when you try to, like, act like this is canon or something, you start to run into problems, because it's like, predators that's not how they hunt,
Right.
So it's like, it's cool to watch it as just a fun thing. Yeah, that's what I mean, though.
It's they were doing something different with it.
It becomes a contradiction, though, because it's cool that they tried something new and that it was fun and made some interesting visuals and some moments and stuff. All of that stuff's cool. The problem is that they tried to, like, push into, like, canon. And then it becomes like, okay, well, if you're trying to push the canon, then I have to, like, believe that this fits with everything else, and it doesn't.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of was my big issue with this, I think, more than anything else, is that it just fell into that trap of, like, oh, it's animation, we can do whatever we want, but at the same time, they're trying to, like, make it fit or something, and it's like, just do one or the other. Either just go hog wild and just have really fun animated shorts that mean nothing and are disconnected from everything and don't have anything to do with that, and they're completely separate, or do something that's seriously tied into that universe and is actually interesting and gives us new levels of depth there. And it's either or. They're mutually exclusive. They don't work together that way. That's, I think, my biggest issue with this. But if you were just to watch it and just go, I'm just going to watch it because I want to watch some fun animated action, there you go. It's great. If you're going to watch it under the context of, like, I want to get some more Predator lore, it's garbage.
Yeah. If you're looking at this from, like, a lore perspective or something, then yeah, no, it's not helpful.
Yeah.
If you just want to, like, be mildly entertained for, like, an hour and a half, then sure.
Yeah, pretty much. But like I said, I went into it kind of expecting just to be, like, mildly entertained, and I still ended up getting, like, really frustrated by the end of it. So, I want them to do better. And this is happening a lot. Like I said, it happened with Marvel, it's happened with Star Wars, it's happened with a bunch of things where they've done this kind of concept of, like, oh, let's do animation, then we can do anything kind of attitude. And they just end up, in every case, just being lazy.
Yeah.
And I wish they wouldn't. I wish they would take it seriously and actually make something, like, really interesting and new, But instead, they just get really lazy.
Unfortunately, stuff like Spider-Verse is just rare.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's it for this week. So next week, we are going to be watching Heads of State, which is on Amazon Prime. This is like an action movie that stars John Cena and Idris Elba, who previously worked together on The Suicide Squad with James Gunn, who we talked about a lot when we were talking about Superman. But Idris Elba is playing the Prime Minister of the UK, and John Cena is playing like an actor turned president of the US. Kind of like a Ronald Reagan type or something, but more like action hero, modern version of like what that would look like, kind of. And it's about the two of them, and they're being hunted, and they're trying to survive together, and it's like an action movie with them, and it looks like a lot of fun. So that is available on Amazon Prime. That's what we'll be watching next week. So watch that and then come to enjoy our conversation with us about that movie. So until next week, thank you everybody for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Voxel Hero. Those same two handles you can find on Blue Sky as well. You can also go to our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to our website and open up a container store for any of our podcast episodes and scroll down to the bottom paragraph, you'll find all the relevant links to our SoundCloud page, our RSS feed, all that stuff's there. You can also find a link to our YouTube channel where you can find not only the entire backlog of this podcast, but additional content throughout the years that we've been doing this, including like reactions to like episodes of Hannibal and Game of Thrones and stuff if you want to go way back. That's all there as well. You can also subscribe to this through your favorite podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcasts or Pocket Cast. So do that as well if you want. Until next week, thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. visit our website at thetitlescreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.